Passengers.
Yep.
Passengers.
Passengers.
A sort of a literal vehicle for Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence in space.
Yeah, to just be beautiful in space and have no consequences and just be beautiful people, even if they are just sociopaths.
Quite right.
I did like the film. Just start off, just there.
Yeah, cards on the table, neither of us like this film.
I haven't sighed and groaned that much during a film since Batman vs Superman. Like, there was just so much wrong with it. But we'll get onto that. So, Andrew, what is Passengers?
Well, Passengers is it's sort of a sci-fi film, but it's not a sci-fi film, and it's a romantic film, but it's not a romantic film, and it's sort of not really a comedy, and it's not really a thriller or a. It's a sort of a nothing of a film.
It's a lot of things that it's also not.
Basically, it's a spaceship going through space, and there are people on it who are sleeping for 120 years in these cryopods. But one of them, Chris Pratt, wakes up 90 years early. Yeah. And then it all goes a bit castaway. He grows a beard. He looks sort of like Zach Galifianakis.
He looks a mix between Zach Galifianakis and Matthew McConaughey. He's a weird hybrid.
Yeah, the first 30 minutes of the film is actually quite watchable. It's just Chris Pratt slowly becoming more bearded and doing Space Castaway. But then he gets lonely, spots Jennifer Lawrence, thinks it would be better if she was here, because then
stands over her pod, watching her while she sleeps.
It does all get a bit creepy. Yeah. He eventually wakes her up, and after having woken her up, they have a bit of a romance. She finds out that he basically kidnapped her.
He space murdered her.
He space murdered her, yes. Yeah. And so she gets really angry, but then Lawrence Fishburne turns up to explain that actually the ship is being destroyed and they need to save the day. He then dies because why wouldn't you just kill Lawrence Fishburne off in the middle of your sci-fi film?
Who was in it for 30 minutes? Now, at this point, I think we should say some people might argue that we're spoiling the film and these are spoilers, but
you're not going to go watch this film.
Don't. We're doing you a favour. If anything, seriously, don't watch this movie. Please. This is a public service announcement from Atlas Film Reviews.
If you like Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, they're in better films. They are in better films.
Yeah.
You can go watch them in
It would be nice if there was a better film with them together, granted.
That's true.
But there isn't.
They are essentially two very, very likeable actors playing characters who are both essentially sociopaths.
Yeah, and that brings me on to one of my criticisms, actually, is we spoke about Chris Pratt's early castaway moments. You're supposed to feel really sorry for him. The way that it's all shot, you feel that this is set up to create this very sympathetic character. Because it's Chris Pratt doing fucking Chris Pratt, I didn't get it. He was just too goofy. And not necessarily from his performance, but it's the casting and the nature of how Chris Pratt does anything. Anytime he did something that should have been heartbreaking, I was like, oh, that Chris Pratt, oh, isn't he funny? And then Jennifer Lawrence is just this weak, horrible cat. What do we like about the movie?
Well, aside from Lawrence Fishburne, there is another sort of side character who makes the film, I'm not going to say watchable, but... No, I'll say watchable. He makes the film watchable. Michael Sheen plays a robot bartender, and he is hilarious and easily the best thing in the film. I know it's making me look like I have a thing for droids in films. I don't, but Michael Sheen is very good in this.
He's very good. He's very witty, and he does, going back to Rogue One, he has the appeal that K2SO has, is that very stony-faced, deadpan, very inappropriate humour not inappropriate in kind of fart jokes at a funeral, inappropriate, but misunderstanding situations the way that robots do so well.
He is the only character who is really well written.
Absolutely.
The other two are cliches, but he may be cliches, but he's at least good, funny
cliches. He's a redeemable cliche, in a sea of misguidedness, misguided script writing, misguided direction, misguided performances to an extent.
Essentially misguided filmmaking.
Yeah. I think one specific issue that we should really talk about is the relationship between Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. So as Andrew mentioned, Chris Pratt space murders her by waking her up, in the same way that a child wakes up an adult and runs away and hides and goes, oh no, it wasn't me. And she falls in love with the only other human being available.
Yes. Within the confines of this spacecraft, he has essentially kidnapped her.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is the equivalent of kidnapping a girl you like the look of because you know she's the one for you, she just doesn't realise it yet because she hasn't been forced to stay in close proximity to you for long enough, which doesn't go down well in a court of law, but does work in space if you happen to be in space.
Ain't no lawyers in space.
They're all frozen and sleeping, so...
Well, yes. But, and this whole relationship... So by the end of the film we have Jennifer Lawrence hating Chris Pratt because he space murdered her.
Yes.
Which is a justifiable reaction.
And we're not exaggerating. Her character literally says, he murdered me.
Yeah.
At one point.
She doesn't say space murder, sadly.
She doesn't say space murder, but it is space murder.
It's space murder.
But yes, and then by the end of the film, they are back together again because, you know, you've sort of got to forgive the person who space murders you, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's Chris Pratt.
But this is the thing. Like, she just forgives him because he goes to sacrifice himself for the good of mankind. He does a Spock, you know.
Well, no, Lawrence Fishburne does a Spock.
Fishburne does a Spock. They're all trying to do a Spock.
The needs of the many outweigh
the needs of the few.
And she just all of a sudden brings him in from the outside and goes, oh, well, you sacrificed yourself to keep me alive, therefore we're in love again. Like, essentially, Chris Pratt, not only has he woken up and murdered a woman, he's forced her into a symbiotic relationship with no escape.
She didn't seem that impressed.
Post-film, we both saw that there were themes and plot devices in the film that were underused or introduced and wasted or handled badly.
It's a messy tangle of genres, and if you tease those genres out, you can make at least 3 good films from what's in this film. But
and we've come up with 3 good film ideas. So, number 1, Chris Pratt as a space psychopath.
Yes, in which we see the entire film from the eyes of Jennifer Lawrence, and she wakes up not certain. She doesn't know whether or not she has been woken up on purpose, and she gradually begins to suspect that maybe Chris Pratt has not only woken her up, but may have even done this before, and it develops as a tense thriller, and then she ends up just stuck living with him in this horrible nightmare on this ship.
Absolutely.
Because she can't escape. Not a feel-good film.
And with that, you're just taking out all the sinking ship stuff, taking all of that out and focusing on people, on a functioning ship, where Chris Pratt happens to be...
character relationships, and you get to see Chris Pratt being full-on psychopath, which would be really good.
Which is one of the things that it kind of very vaguely touches on in the movie, but as I mentioned earlier, Chris Pratt's too Chris Pratt for it to come across.
They don't stop him being lovable. He's just charming and lovable, and you're like, no, you've abducted this woman.
You've space murdered her.
We're going on too much about space murder.
Space murder!
Film idea number 2, which is actually a pretty decent sci-fi rom-com, featuring a little dark, but it would be a little dark, I mean, but you've got Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence together in space, and they're it's their romance as they're stuck on this ship, and I mean, they both start off, they presumably in this film both wake up at the same time, and they're there and they sort of fall in love, and they know that they're falling in love only because they're together, stuck together in this situation. But you have some nice banter with Michael Sheen as the bartender still, and you've got lots of scenes in the sort of restaurants, the empty restaurants in this ship, where they're talking about how difficult it was getting a reservation and making jokes like that.
Yeah.
Which they do have some
of the dialogue which works really nicely in the film, but it's never played upon.
That, especially with 2 actors as talented and as good at being likeable and funny as Jennifer Lawrence.
They could have really played on because there's a scene when they're in a restaurant, there's nobody else there, Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence both go, oh, we couldn't get a reservation, oh, empty restaurant, and it's amusing. But if you take that scene and put a shed load of gallows humour into it, and both of them just holding each other's gaze with, we're gonna die, but we better make the most of it. Like, it then is, as you say, dark but funny. Like,
and you could have it gradually getting happier and happier towards the end as they are actually falling in love, and it's it would be a good film, and it wouldn't need any of the the ship is falling apart.
It doesn't matter if they die, Andrew, as long as they're together. Film idea number 3. You forget the characters, you take out the personality and the romance of Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, you focus on the sinking ship, they've got me saying it now, you focus on that element and you make it an action movie.
And you gradually build up the tension with, because they do it quite nicely actually in the film. They have the bits where sort of subsystems on the ship are going a bit wrong. The robots are sort of, the Hoover robots are just bumping into the walls, and it's sort of off-putting, but they never really do enough with it in the film.
Yeah.
But if they did work on that, they had it just like the scene where Michael Sheen, the bartender, is going wrong.
Absolutely.
That was actually scary.
That's a great
because
scene.
we care about him as a thing, and he's just bugging out, whacking his head against the bar.
Scene, although it's very, very small, for me
it's horrific.
It was kind of very much akin to the robot Ash breaking down an alien when he starts spewing all the white liquid.
Yeah.
Like, it's that shocking.
Yeah. And if they
just not as good.
If they'd done more things like that, they could have made again,
absolutely, and even taken from Alien those elements of actually that this has all been a big setup and there might be an experiment gone wrong or elements like that.
Because in Passengers, the ship is being run by this company that is ferrying people, and they have this safety record with the cryopods where they say no one has ever woken up early. You could have it. They don't ever go into this in the film, but what if the reason they have this perfect safety record is that everyone who wakes up early is taken out by the ship,
absolutely,
by the ship's security systems, because the ship is like, well, bad publicity if you're found alive having lost. If we've space murdered you, we're liable.
Yeah.
So we'll just properly murder you. And
anyone who is there to remember that these people potentially are dead themselves are long dead because they've taken 120 years to get to the place.
Yeah.
That would work really, really nicely.
You've got a film about...
I would watch all three of these films.
Yeah.
But Passengers,
It tries to be all three of them and manages to be none.
It wasn't good. It just wasn't good.
It wasn't good. Don't go see it.
And it wasn't even likeably bad, it was just bad. So...
there you have it.
There you go.
That's our view on Passengers.
Ending on a real
low.
Yeah.
Just like Passengers. Thank you for watching this Atlas Film Reviews video. We're very grateful. Please subscribe on the buttons. Push the buttons that you see on your screen.
Subscription should be down there. Over there is our Rogue One video.
Oh, there it is.
There it is, yeah. Check that out. Make sure to subscribe. We're still trying to do this weekly, so hopefully next week we'll have another video which will be a bit more uplifting.
Well, it might be Silence, so...
It might be Assassin's Creed.
Oh god.
Either way, it's not going to be good, to be honest.
Yeah, it's probably going to be pretty gloomy.
Just enjoy the outro music.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cheers.